Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Welcome to the Green Your Neighborhood Community Forum. We have a really exciting conversation tonight. I just want to check with Jackie. Jackie, are we live on Facebook before I jump in?
Yep, I think we should be all set. We are live streaming on Facebook too.
Perfect.
So if anyone is interested in sharing, hopefully we'll have some more folks watching on there as well.
Perfect. And for anyone who is looking for the Facebook live stream to share, it is on the Friends of the Rouge Facebook page, so you will be able to find it there. We would like to thank each of you for signing up and for joining us for Green Your Neighborhood tonight. We have a really awesome keynote speaker. My name is Elaine Elliott. I work for the Sierra Club Michigan chapter. I'm the Green Stormwater Infrastructure community organizer there, and we host Green Your Neighborhood in partnership with Friends of the Rouge annually. And so I'll let my colleague Jackie introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Hakula. I go by she, her. I am the restoration coordinator with Friends of the Rouge. And like Elaine mentioned, we work together on a lot of different programs. You'll be hearing about some more of those later on today. And we're just so happy to have you today. Thank you for joining us.
Perfect. And we do have a chat available, and we also have the Q&A feature available. So when we get to our keynote for the event, feel free to utilize the Q&A to submit any questions you may have, and we'll be able to make sure that those are answered during the presentation. So before we jump into our keynote event tonight, I wanted to give an overview just about why we do Green Your Neighborhood and what we do as organizations. Perfect. So as I mentioned, I work for Sierra Club Michigan chapter. We are a chapter of a national environmental nonprofit, and my work is focused exclusively in Detroit, where I work on green stormwater infrastructure projects, and with much of that work being in partnership with Friends of the Rouge. And Friends of the Rouge is, again, a partner for Green Your Neighborhood and an organization that we work with quite often. Their mission is to protect, restore, and enhance the Rouge River watershed through stewardship, education, and collaboration. So they work across multiple cities, but focusing on protecting and preserving the Rouge River watershed. So why do we have programs like Green Your Neighborhood? Why are we talking about water quality, and what is the problem here? So in Detroit, we have a significant amount of impervious surface, which just means the water does not drain. So if you see the graph that is on the screen, your sidewalks and your roofs, those are all considered impervious, and then your grasses would typically be considered pervious surfaces. And so in addition to having a high proportion of impervious surfaces, Detroit also has a combined sewage overflow system, which means that when it rains, we get large amounts of stormwater, as well as any of the wastewater from our homes and runoff from our roads. It all flows into one singular pipe. And some of that water is filtered, but it ultimately overflows into the Detroit River and into the Rouge River when we get massive amounts of rain. So normally, under normal rain conditions, that water flows to a wastewater treatment plant where it's all filtered and processed. But when we get those large storms, so think about the June and July storms that we saw last year, our treatment plants can't process water that quickly, and so that water is partially treated and then it flows into our rivers. And so we end up with issues that impact our water quality. So if you think about the algae blooms that folks often talk about in Lake Erie, that is because a lot of the things that we do in our daily lives, or a lot of the actions that we take, we have chemicals. So like when we have an oil leak in our car, for example, and it's leaking in our driveway, and then the rain comes and takes that into our waterways, that all ultimately impacts our wildlife. So we try to do our best to make sure we're preventing as much of that water from ending up in the stormwater system as possible, so that we can keep the Great Lakes clean. And in Michigan, we're fortunate enough to be surrounded by about 20% of the world's fresh water, which is not something that we take lightly. We definitely enjoy it if you think about all the time that you may spend on beaches. So we want to make sure that we're protecting the waterways, not only for wildlife, but also for recreational purposes. So what are some things that you might be able to do to help protect our waterways? So if your downspout at your home is connected to a sewer system right now, you can disconnect your downspout. That's one really easy way to prevent that or reduce the amount of stormwater runoff. You can install a rain barrel to help capture some of that water that comes off of your roof, and you can use that for any non-drinking purposes. So to water your lawn, plant gardens and water those, that's all perfectly fine with a rain barrel. And then the last thing that you can do is install a rain garden. So later in our program today, after our keynote, we will talk about 2 programs that we have that focus on rain gardens in Detroit, both how to install them and then how to maintain large-scale projects. And generally speaking, when we, being Sierra Club and Friends of Rouge, when we talk about our rain gardens work, we typically are talking about what it does to protect water quality, but we also recognize that this work has implications that span well beyond water quality. So whether that be helping young people get exposed to this kind of work and teaching them about gardening and planting, whether it be, for example, the top right picture is a photo of a garden that we put in last year at a community health center. So just providing opportunities for us to beautify spaces, or even the photos that you see on the bottom where folks are kind of convening around a neighborhood library. We are using these gardens to create space where community can convene. We're building community between neighbors and community members, and ultimately helping to beautify neighborhoods. And so with that in mind, I will defer to Jackie. We have a poll tonight that asks just a couple questions to get a feel for like why folks are here and what made them come out to green your neighborhood. And then I will move to our keynote after the poll.
All right, I just launched that poll, so hopefully you are seeing that. So if you want to go ahead and let us know what brought you here today to green your neighborhood, we would love to know. I see some responses coming in.
Perfect. Awesome.
All right, so we have about 85%, 86% of people answering. Get in your answers real quick, and I will go ahead and end the poll so we can see those results.
Perfect. Looks like we have a nice mix of folks. Awesome. Cool. So it's always nice to know who's in the room as we kind of talk about these issues and begin to move through. So with that, I will introduce our keynote speaker for the 2022 Green Your Neighborhood series. And I see a quick question in the chat. So I'm just gonna answer this one because it's kind of quick. Someone asked, I would like to eventually convert my front lawn to a pollinator garden. Does this violate city ordinances in the area? I live in Detroit, but I'm curious about other cities too. So Jackie, do you want to take it or do you want me to take it?
You can go ahead and take it.
Okay, perfect. So no, we actually plant all our gardens. We work in the city of Detroit through Rain Gardens to Rescue. We actually plant all our gardens in the front yard. The main thing that you need to be, if it's a rain garden, the main thing you need to be careful about is making sure that it's sized appropriately so that you don't have water that kind of spills over onto the sidewalk. But we can talk a little bit more about that in the next section of the program. So stay tuned for the segment on Rain Gardens to Rescue. And then let's see, I see someone raising their hand. If you can put your question in the chat, we can get an answer to you. All right, so with that, I am going to introduce our keynote speaker. So tonight getting super ahead. Tonight we are really excited to have Tori Smith with us as a keynote for the 2022 Green Your Neighborhood. Tori serves as the Michigan Mellon Design Fellow in egalitarianism in the metropolis. In the metropolis. Funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, the Michigan Mellon Project on the egalitarian metropolis explores contemporary issues on urbanism and egalitarianism through interdisciplinary collaboration between faculty and students at Taubman College and College of Literature, Science, and the Arts. Smith's fellowship research, building on her interests at the intersections of environmental justice, urban activism, and design, will explore ways ecological regeneration can address systemic racial inequity. Smith won the Burton L. Kapner Memorial Award for the most outstanding thesis, as well as a program distinction award. Deeply committed to the Taubman College, Smith was co-creator of the Design Justice Actions, co-lead of the Taubman College Community Engagement Working Group, executive board member of NOMAS, and contributor to Design Features Forum. We are really excited to have Tori with us tonight. And with that, I will pass it to Tori Smith.
Great, thank you so much, Elaine and Jackie, for the introduction, and also for reaching out and inviting me to speak to everyone and share the work. So excited to share the project that I've been working on, I guess, for the last year and a half. I'm a recent graduate from Taubman College at the University of Michigan. So I have prepared a presentation of the work. I'll go ahead and share my screen with y'all. Okay, great. Can everyone see?
Looks great, Tori.
Thank you. So I will just jump in. So obviously, my name is Tori Smith. I am going to share my project, my passion project, but also my thesis project through Taubman College. It's called Equitable Landscapes. So really excited. I think it ties into a lot of the work that Sierra Club does, and also Friends of the Rouge. A lot of the work is actually grounded within River Rouge and Detroit as a whole. So Elaine kind of already spoke to this, but the project and my interests specifically focus on the intersectionality between design activism, environmental justice, and biology. So my degree, my master's degree, is in architecture. I also am an artist in the city of Detroit. So obviously I've been collaborating with quite a few people on this project, biologists, people who have a lot more knowledge. I'm sure all of you might have things to contribute as well. So I'm really excited for feedback and Q&A at the end. But before I jump into the work, I wanted to share a little bit more about me. So I'm the Michigan Mellon Design Fellow. So I also continue this research that we're about to talk about, but I also teach a program that is called Arc Prep. So focuses on working with DPS students, specifically Cast Tech and Renaissance currently. So I teach them art and architecture, and we've been really diving into some of this work, but some fun things in the city as well. I also am an independent design consultant, so I do architectural art and mural work in the city of Detroit and also surrounding neighborhoods. Just a picture of me with a mural that I did in Berkeley. I also serve as the design manager for East Jefferson Development Corporation. So really love the role, get to work with community members and the development team to reimagine and kind of rework the Jefferson Chalmers neighborhood. Also just a few words that I threw out there. I live in Martin Park, really passionate about the neighborhood. Love techno. I know Detroit is the birthplace of techno, so I really enjoy that. Non-humans, which we'll talk a little bit more about throughout the presentation, both plants and animals, a lot of my interests surround that. I'm sure you all as well, since you're here. And then co-creation, again, collaboration, working with other people I think architects a lot of the time like to silo themselves with other architects. I'm not really about that. I love talking with other people and hearing other perspectives, and working together in a way. So my disclaimer to start is that this project is currently a work in progress, still gathering research, still working through a lot of the design drawings, speaking with different organizations, both in Michigan and Detroit, but also outside of Detroit. So always really open to feedback and questions. So I just wanted to share that before we dig in. So I'm not going to read all of this. This is the project statement, but I'll read the first sentence. Equitable Landscapes specifically prioritizes anti-racist, grassroots environmental justice centered around urban design activism, the strengthening of community, and care for local wildlife. So this sets the stage for global environmental change. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what's driven the work, specifically some of the harmful effects, both historical and current, like practices of redlining, as well as urban heat island effect and air and water pollution. So really the work seeks to create a proposal that really centers around grassroots design action. Throughout this presentation, I'll be quoting an article. It's called The Ecological and Evolutionary Consequences of Systemic Racism in Urban Environments. That's really been the driver for much of the research and much of the design proposal as well. So I'll just read this quote because I think it's really important. Addressing systemic and structural racism is necessary to comprehensively understand urban, ecological, and evolutionary dynamics, conserve biodiversity, improve human health and well-being, and promote justice in nature and society. And just a few, there's a lot of imagery throughout this presentation, and I have some links at the end for those of you. There's a lot of text as well. If you'd like to read more, I have some links for that as well. So jumping in, I'm going to just walk through some of the research, and then we'll get to the actual design proposal. But I started off by looking at the city of Detroit. So I want to give space for land acknowledgement. So Detroit occupies the ancestral homeland of the Anishinaabe Nation. So the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and Potawatomi. I think it's really important to note that. So looking at Detroit, and it's funny because River Rouge was really where I landed with much of my research, and it's actually cut off. These are very early maps. But they still speak to what I was investigating. So really looking at as current as possible information on 90+% Black and brown neighborhoods, and then overlaying that with historically redline neighborhoods. So that information was kind of the next overlay that I added to this Detroit map. Then looking at neighborhoods that were high risk for air pollution and urban heat island effect. And then that was really where I started to pinpoint, okay, like where could we possibly focus on these interventions for this environmental change. And I also have been thinking about this in more of like a holistic, larger regional and potentially global manner. So starting with Detroit, because obviously this is my home city, I'm really passionate. I know the neighborhoods, been here for a while. But I do see this as something that could be implemented across the U.S. and potentially the world. But we'll see. So again, continuing with the research, some quotes. So neighborhood wealth is directly correlated with biodiversity. So plant biodiversity in particular. Also thinking about how low-income neighborhoods have reduced tree and vegetation cover and increased impervious surface cover, which contributes to higher surface temperatures in cities worldwide. And then again, a few other quotes just speaking to how heat and air pollution are unevenly distributed in communities of color, which puts us at high risk. So just a graphic really speaking to some of the environmental factors that I was considering with this research. And what really drove at the very bottom oppressive, racist, and classist practices. So again, lots of quotes. really thinking about systemic racism and the connection between the ecosystem. The thing that I really loved about this article was it was one of the first, and I've still been digging, one of the first that I've been able to find that really links biodiversity with racist practices. So a lack of biodiversity with these historical issues. So it really drove much of this project. So I eventually centered on the River Rouge neighborhood and specifically Boynton. Population around 8,000, very strong knit community. As I was researching and visiting the neighborhood, I could definitely get the sense that the residents and community members were really passionate about their neighborhood, obviously facing a lot of environmental risk factors, and obviously these are still ongoing, and people have been speaking out and really passionate about enacting change on this in this regard. So really just started collecting quotes and reading articles about this. So obviously there's quite a few factories over in Boynton specifically. So many violations, fines, there's crazy odors like gas, tons of things going on in the neighborhood, which there has been little to nothing done about this. But people are speaking out, and there seems to be a lot of organizing and conversation about this. Just a quick site plan of the neighborhood. Again, we're in River Rouge, so looking at a lot of the factories, you've got the Detroit River, but you also have the freeways kind of bisecting Boynton and cutting it off, and really putting the neighborhood at risk and the community members and plants and animals within that community in harm's way. So these are just some pictures from when I visited the neighborhood. I went back a couple times, but this was October 2021. Walked around. There's actually some really beautiful Sears kit homes. As someone in architecture, this is something that, I mean, Detroit is known for. They're really interesting, really great typology. So got to see some of that. Obviously, everything kind of the backdrop of the factories, the smoke, and lots of community space, but also vacant land and areas with a lot of opportunity for some of these proposals. So I started really thinking about where I would focus, if I could, this initial proposal. So really looking at this intersection, kind of Patricia Street, but also right by the Fisher Freeway, and really closer to Marathon. So creating some kind of green buffer was really the thought process here. Some initial pictures of the sites that I was looking at for this intervention. So again, lots of vacant land, lots of opportunities. You've got the freeway, so there's noise, there's obviously dust settling from the constant move of traffic, and really just a good starting place for some of these thoughts. So another powerful quote from the article: equitable restoration of urban habitat patches and infrastructure necessarily improves landscape connectivity and refuge to support successful colonization of native species, guards against local extinctions, and increases urban biodiversity. So this one was really powerful, and that really brings me to the design portion of the presentation. So this is actually one of my favorite images. Obviously, as someone in architectural design, I use 3D software quite a bit. But I began to think about if we could really reimagine our neighborhoods to not just benefit humans, but to benefit non-humans as well. So plants and critters, as I've been calling them as of late. If we could think about what these spaces would begin to look like, this is really what I began to imagine, and some of the feedback from the organizations that I spoke with and individuals who both in landscape architecture, but also biology in Michigan, but also outside of Michigan, were really intrigued and gave me feedback on some of these spaces. So that really drove the look and feel of the work. So I mentioned, obviously, I'm trained as an architect, but there's quite a few different actors who would be involved in something like this. So really, this project does also engage, like, what is the role of the architect and designer? And I know me personally, this definitely is not a solo effort. I would love to take a back seat, and I have been kind of sharing the work and letting it really take on a life of its own. But part of the process is really thinking about who are the actors, what are the different elements that need to come together for something like this to begin to move, specifically in the city of Detroit. So looking at injustice, you've got all the main industrial facilities and factories in the neighborhood, but you also have policy and regulation. So thinking about how can we collaborate with the city of Detroit, the planning department, on a larger scale, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, even getting to something like the smaller scale factor of this. So thinking of agency and organizing, who within the neighborhood could be an ally, who would be interested in taking part and really championing some of this work. Some of the agencies that I had initially researched was inside Southwest Detroit. I actually got to speak with Eric Paul Howard, who did a really amazing kind of article / interview series with residents from the neighborhood on air pollution, specifically in River Rouge. Also thinking about Sidewalk Detroit, installation pieces and education, I think, is a huge part of this. Congress of Communities Southwest, thinking about how we can engage youth throughout this process. I think a huge factor of this would be education and stewardship. Really looking to engage, obviously, the environmental kind of biology side of things within Detroit. So I've outlined the Sierra Club has been on here since the start. I've just been highlighting it since we're presenting with you all, but Keep Growing Detroit, iNaturalist, which we'll talk about a little bit more within the presentation. Detroit is for Environmental Justice, the MEJC, and I'm sure some people might actually be on this call. That would be really great. I've been in the process of reaching out, but I love any communication, any feedback and collaboration is really welcome for this. Greening of Detroit, obviously, again, would be amazing partner for this work, and the Detroit Biodiversity Network. And there's many others who are not on this diagram, but this graphic was just something I was working through. Funding obviously is important. Who is going to fund this? There's obviously lots of grants surrounding environmental action at a national scale, but potentially within Michigan and Detroit. I've been having conversations with a biodiversity team with Google X, their research sector. They're very interested in taking us on, and we've been having conversations. They're very interested in the work, and they've been kind of pitching this, so we'll see where that goes, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So just talking about how this has been progressing and who are some of the specific individuals and organizations that I've been working with thus far. I have faculty, really great faculty at U of M at the Architecture and Urban Planning Department at Taubman. Anya, Sorota, Kathy Velikoff, and of course the dean, Jonathan Massey. They've all been very supportive of the project. Also looking to engage the fabrication lab there, really amazing facility. So great resources. I've also been talking with an amazing person and professor. She's the associate chair of architecture at the University of Buffalo, Joyce Wong. If you do not know her, please look up her work. She is absolutely great. She has been nationally recognized for her work, and she coined the term habitecture, which is a lot of what this project combines with urban rewilding, which we'll take a look at in a minute. I mentioned the Google X research team. They're called Buzz. They've been really interested in the project, and we've been having conversations with them as well. East Jefferson Development Corporation, where I work, we're possibly thinking of testing out some of these, what I call biofollies, in the neighborhood, some of the sites, as well as working with the parent company and nonprofit JEI. And then, of course, I mentioned Eric Paul Howard, who has been really good to talk with in the past at Inside Southwest Detroit. And then lastly, I have been talking with the biology department at University of Wisconsin, just because I've had some connections there, and they've given really great feedback on some of the habitat design work that's been done. So to start with, again, more of the research specific to Detroit and biodiversity, I really started thinking about native critters, but also plant species. Again, I'll keep mentioning this. I'm an architect. I've been teaching myself, and I've been learning throughout the process. I'm very interested in this. I think in a past life, I would have gone into biology or maybe even urban planning, something like that. But I've been trying to educate myself on native tree species, native grasses, and of course the native critter species within Detroit. So I had to isolate some creatures. This obviously is not a complete like food chain, but thinking about very small scale, from like the size of a honeybee to maybe even the size of local stray dogs and cats, which I think they're important to consider and think about as well, because they are here, and providing space for them to live and survive, I think, is super important, and not something that we necessarily do as architects or planners. So like I said, learning about native species, I really dug in, and I actually have, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the platform, the online platform Miro. I created a Miro board that has all of my research. I am going to share the link. It is public. If for anyone who's interested in taking a look at some of the references and articles that I've been just saving. It is very laggy because there's a lot of information on there, but much of the research about the plant species that I've been looking at is on there. So again, wanted to consider native species that are salt resistant and pretty hardy for Detroit when I was researching kind of the soil conditions and things of that nature. And then again, on that same line, I looked at habitat typologies. So specifically looking at each of the critters that I had kind of isolated within Detroit, what their specific needs are, both for like their biome conditions, but also shelter conditions, what other species they need to survive, looking at like kind of a holistic approach. And again, scale is super important. Creating habitectures or biofollies that really think about what each animal needs has been super important for me as well. So this brings me to the vision, which I've already started kind of saying this term, biofolly. Really, this is an urban rewilding. So again, grassroots organizing and design action, but creating small-scale structures, living structures actually, that would begin to heal the environment was really the driver and kind of outcome and final assumption from the research. So this is really that corner of Boynton that I was looking at. You've got the freeway, and you've also got, I think this is Patricia Street, the vacant lots that were there. How could we start to activate them and create a living architecture that serves not just humans, but critters and plants? And then how could these living structures take on kind of a life of their own with little care and maintenance from us? So there are quite a few biofollies. I think I have 8 of them, and there's still more being generated, but I'll kind of flip through them. Garden is really a garden kind of green wall panel system. So it serves multiple functions. It obviously creates space for critters to inhabit through these green wall panel systems, and metal mesh almost covering space for algae or other kind of vine growing plants to habitate. But it also can provide residents with a space for a personal garden. So there is like a food justice element to this as well, and really just like a holistic way of thinking, and also creating kind of that biophilic sense of design and creating emotional well-being through gardening and green architecture. So throughout the presentation, I have these very illustrative renderings of what these spaces could begin to look like. So again, as I was describing, this green wall panel system of just kind of aluminum frame, and you've got expanded metal mesh for this kind of open roof system, as well as creating a semi-enclosure for a garden. So compost is actually the next biofolly, so very similar. This one would actually be constructed out of rammed earth. So again, very similar modular construction. So providing openings for critters to pass through while creating an actual living architecture compost area. And then we have enclosure. So this is, again, made out of rammed earth, providing space for multiple types of species. I know I mentioned stray cats, dogs, maybe even raccoons, like larger animals have like inhabiting the base of the structure, providing a dark, safe space for them to stay and rest, but also creating space for roosting creatures, like potentially bats and birds. Got these like small pine wood critter apartment attachments. So again, birds and insects could stay within these spaces. Restore is, again, centered around the elements of repairing the environment. So this one would actually be generated out of mycelium panels. So same kind of modular system with openings and same typology and language, but would be made out of mycelium, which is a mushroom structure. You can cure it so it doesn't grow. In this case, it would be uncured. It would grow naturally and eventually create like a new landscape based on the fungi structures. But really interested in how this could potentially filter pollutants from the environment, because it actually does have that quality. This has actually been used in a couple architectural projects. It's a very new material that's been used, but really great, really interesting. Also thinking about how you could incorporate space for insects, potential hives, and how insects or potentially even bees could inhabit these structures, creating openings and space for them within these wall systems. So perch is, again, very similar to enclosure, creating space for smaller critters to inhabit. Again, you've got these literally wooden perches for flying birds, other animals like bats to kind of like sit, rest. You've also got a bench for people to sit as well. So again, trying to promote interaction between both humans and animals through these biofollies. So just an image of what compost would look like, maybe even perch in the background, and how these spaces could both serve humans and critters. Range is more so a creation of burrows and tunnels. So they would just be space for creatures to kind of start digging their own holes. So it would really promote that. You've got shielding brush. So again, looking back to those native grasses and plants to Detroit for these spaces. And again, burrow is just kind of a singular typology of that. offering space for creatures to start digging and creating their own burrows or hole system. So pond was really thinking about water sources within the neighborhood. So again, allowing critters to have access to fresh water. So I think this would be almost like an eco-friendly man-made pond, and still looking into how this would come together, but creating paths for both humans to occupy the space, but also critters as well. Platform for people to come sit, maybe even like have a barbecue and congregate. And then the last biofolly really brings everything together. I'm calling it commons. So it's these larger scale interventions where you're creating space out of the different panel systems, pathways for people and animals to occupy and move throughout the space, as well as these solar powered educational displays with some kind of connectivity to iNaturalist, which I'll touch on in a minute. And there's a lot more, obviously you see there's a lot more text. I'm trying to give a quick overview since we have limited time, but I do have a website. I'll share the link at the end. But this is really just an overall site plan explaining how these biofollies come together and how critters actually and people inhabit these spaces. There also is a connection with the existing residential and commercial properties. So when you're thinking about something like garden or compost, obviously you're always going to have those areas close to residences. So neighbors and community members can actually access those and have some agency and ownership over those spaces. Again, talking about how these sites will begin to reduce noise and pollution, provide both a sound barrier, obviously, and a barrier and kind of like common space for people to inhabit, as well as how these elements come together to form the commons. So just a shot of what the commons could look like. Could also see community members having, again, barbecues, gathering spaces. There would be seating there, and obviously learning about local wildlife as well. Just some sections of what this begins to look like, the scale of these things. They're not like crazy out of scale. It's not anything that's the size of a skyscraper or even two-story building. I think the tallest structure obviously is perch, an enclosure, specifically looking at the heights that bats need to roost. So just giving a scale and what these landscapes begin to look like within a neighborhood or block context. And then I've been getting into detailing and like technical drawings, but these are just a few quick sketches of a wall section of enclosure, how it would be connected to the earth, as well as these panel systems, how they would be just lightly anchored within the landscape. So I mentioned iNaturalist. This actually helped me with a lot of my research, and I see Jackie nodding, which, yeah, it's really great, really amazing platform. This was actually shared with me by the Wisconsin biodiversity team, so it was really great to learn about this platform. They have obviously a website, but also an app. So I specifically researched quite a bit about Detroit wildlife, and it was really great to see what species and like where people have spotted them. So that really drove a lot of this research and the selections of the animals that I was targeting. This is just a screenshot from my Miro board. As you can see, I was really going through and writing down species, looking at like putting everything side by side. It was very intricate and detailed, but still an ongoing process. iNaturalist was super helpful. I do have the website for the Detroit list up here for those of you who might want to access that. So I mentioned the connection to iNaturalist. These solar power panels would actually have some connectivity to your iPhone, so community members could take photos of wildlife. So it's kind of that citizen scientist. Everyone's monitoring and learning about what creatures and what plant life is flourishing on these sites. So hopefully helping to promote environmental justice, but also an understanding about wildlife and plant life. Because I know, and I'll share this as an anecdote, during my thesis presentation, one of the jurors was very adamant about not wanting raccoons living directly next to her. And my response was, they're already there, you just don't see them. I think we need to really learn how to kind of live alongside and with wildlife and plant species. So really passionate about that and creating awareness and education. I think the more education that's made available about this will help people understand and get people excited about taking agency to conserve and work within their own communities. So again, this is a shot of a potentially pond and the creatures that might inhabit these spaces. So we're coming to, I think, towards the end. Again, just more graphics of that corner in Boynton, what these sites could begin to look like at an aerial perspective. So they may look wild, overgrown, and messy to some people, but I think it's really beautiful. Again, this is that urban rewilding and nature really taking over, but people also being able to experience and appreciate and also have pride and agency over over their community spaces. It's just another shot. And this is almost one of the last things I created. Oops, I guess it's just playing. Let me make sure the sound, I'm going to share sound really quickly since there is sound. I created a time-lapse video to, oh, we skipped, sorry guys. Ooh, okay, we're back. So I created a time-lapse video animation of just how these sites would be cared for and how over time they would eventually become overgrown and really both plants and animals would flourish in these spaces. So again, you can kind of see, I think it was really important. We're obviously in Michigan, we're in Detroit, showing the seasons. I know it's easy to always show summer in perfect conditions, but we have fall, we have winter. So what would these structures look like when the trees begin to lose their leaves, when it snows, and obviously in the summer and over the years as time kind of continues on. Yeah, I will say, you've been watching this now, I get excited. I think this is the final scene of just eventually the trees maturing and the space really becoming kind of this wild, beautiful space. Again, I've been thinking and kind of this is just preliminary, but phasing in timeline. It's a little bit hard to read, but really thinking about community charrettes and conversations throughout this design process and this work. How can all of these things be happening at the same time, but also obviously over years? I don't see this happening overnight. Obviously thinking about spaces within neighborhoods that are facing deep environmental injustice. There's things like considering like brownfield conditions and other things that you need to consider. So obviously I see this as something that happens over a span of multiple years. So this is one of my last images, and I'll read this last little blurb. Equitable Landscapes seeks to foster multi-species kinship while healing the environment through co-creation. And just some next steps, things, obviously there's a lot of things on this list, but continuing conversations, reaching out, sharing the work, overall starting hopefully preliminary fabrication of some of the biofollies, and then these are just some of the conversations that I've had and upcoming conversations about the work as well. And as promised, there are links to the Miro board with all my crazy research, link to the website, it's detroitbioproject.org. smith.cargo.site for those of you who would like to read a lot of the text, the tiny text on these slides, and then the article that I've been referencing, which is really amazing. I highly recommend that you read it. Also, my email for those who might want to reach out. Feel free to send me an email. Really happy to make connections and talk more. So that is it. It's a lot. I think I went over time. I'm not sure.
No, you're fine. We have some time, so it was flexible. Thank you so much. That was awesome. One thing that I didn't mention when I was introducing Tori is that I actually found her website first. We were looking for someone. We really wanted to talk about biodiversity and ways we can incorporate that into green infrastructure. And so it was really exciting to find Tori. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you, Tori, for the awesome presentation. And we have lots of questions. We got some comments in the chat about other organizations that you should consider as you continue to do this research, so we can make sure we get those to you. We have folks who want to make sure that they get the link. So we are recording this presentation. I know I saw that question come through. We will be able to share it. So if you have any questions, or if you want to see any parts again, we can share this after. Let's hop into some of the Q&A. So there was one question that we got. Someone is very interested in seeing a botanical garden created in Detroit. So is this a pie in the sky, or is this something you can envision? And if so, how would one start a botanical garden? Like, where would we start?
I mean, I would really love to see this become a reality. And I do think that there are very small scale versions of similar to this project already happening in the city. I can only speak to kind of like the architectural design side of things, but I definitely know that there's some faculty at U of M who have actually bought a couple lots in Detroit, and they've been testing out small scale, both creating a garden, but also creating like space for architectural activation and installation. So I definitely see this as something that could become a reality. Obviously funding and things like that are specific to this project becoming a reality, but I definitely think that this could happen. I wouldn't be the expert on how to like actually start it from a like planting side of things. I'd refer to Elaine or Jackie or the Sierra Club for that, but I definitely see this becoming a reality in the near future.
Thanks, that's awesome. And then along similar lines, we got a question about, where to go? Funding, like what kind of, is there funding that exists for projects like this? Are you having luck finding funding?
So I think the really great thing about the funding conversation is that since it does touch not just kind of the environmental side of things, but like architectural, there's like obviously funding from the city of Detroit. There's funding from U of M. There's also, I mentioned I've been having conversations with the Google team. There's definitely a lot of funding there. They're specifically looking at how to monitor biodiversity across the globe. So they do receive funding at a large scale for that. And I'm hoping to tap into some of that funding. We've been having conversations, so it definitely looks like it will become a reality. But I have not had any issues thus far in my research with funding. It's really just like getting things to a point where everything can start moving. But that's a good question.
Perfect. Lots more questions. So someone says, I know biodiversity can help mitigate damage from industrial sites, but if biodiversity is introduced without major changes from industry, can it be sustained? Or in other words, can the biodiversity survive the pollution?
That is an amazing question, and that's something that I have been really thinking about and considering. So I think it really would be, again, a phasing process and project. I think preparing the site since many of these spaces and like the actual sites that I was proposing, some of them were brownfield lots, there would have to be years of kind of remediation and prep work done. I think it would be a little bit, I'm not gonna, like, I don't like to say like experiment, but I think there would be a lot of monitoring. And that's where I'm really excited about the collaboration with the Google X team, because a lot of the tech that they are developing is specific to monitoring both biodiversity, but pollutants in the neighborhood. So that's something like equipping some of these structures with those monitors, with that technology, would be a key part of whether the biodiversity can survive or not. So again, it would be testing and seeing what the right combination or equation is.
Yeah, awesome.
Great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would just also add in the work that Jackie and I do. We plant a lot with native plants, and there are some tree species and certain plant species that are great for remediation. So it really just depends on like what the specific site conditions are, how much contaminants there are. So yeah, that's awesome. Let's see, we have a couple more. So someone has a question about, I think this might be, so I'll just read the question as it is. So do the students in these programs choose the area they will focus on, or are the areas given to the students? I would love to see something like this done for Highland Park. We also have a development project that is in the pre-planning stage that could be a great class project for college students. So I guess, can you talk a little bit about how you decided on this particular research area?
So yeah, I mean, that's great. I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about this for Highland Park. I actually, so the thesis, like when I was in thesis at U of M this past year, this was very much like self-driven and based on my interests, and also my connection with my brother actually is one of the leaders of the Google X biodiversity team. So that's kind of that connection. So it was something that I self-selected, I was very interested in. But I will say to that point, I think if you are interested in engaging students, college students specifically, I think Taubman and the University of Michigan, potentially Lawrence Tech and U of D would really be interested in potentially taking this on as a design brief. I think it's super important for architecture students to actually interface with those for who they're designing for. So I think this would be a really great potential project, it sounds like, to engage them on. So I would really reach out to the leaders of the architecture, whether it's like the dean or associate dean, and inquire. And I can also make introductions as well, if that's something that you're interested in, Angela.
Perfect, thank you. So we're gonna do two more. Two more. So one question focuses on sourcing. Travis, I see that you just raised your hand. If you can put your question either in the chat or the Q&A, we can make sure we get to it. So we have a couple questions around sourcing. So we know you mentioned compost in your, sorry, let me click answer. I know you mentioned compost in your presentation. Is there a plan yet for where to source that? And then similarly, someone is curious or they love the mycelium idea, but do you know of any folks who are producing mycelium locally?
So I'll answer the mycelium question first. I have not found anyone. I've done some light research specific to Michigan, and I'm actually like in process of that. I found maybe like one potentially like small scale independent source for mycelium, but have reached out and actually am in the process of setting up a conversation. Many of the mycelium sources that I've been looking at are out of state, or would involve me reaching out and like getting the material myself and working with the team to create the panel system and cultivate the mycelium. So it's probably something that would have to be kind of sourced and kind of worked on within Michigan.
Perfect, thanks. And then for our final question, someone wants to know, Alex wants to know, are the structures cost effective? I've got to imagine it'd be more effective to simply plant trees instead of building perches or structures.
So that's actually, I mean, that's a great question. And I will say the whole thought process behind perch, and obviously planting trees is a huge part of this project as well. But the whole idea behind perch is not just creating, I mean, a space for flying creatures, but also creating space for people to sit, be able to observe, as well as provide space for multiple species, and promoting like cohabitation and inhabitation on multiple levels. I have a really great precedent project, again, by Joyce Swan, who is amazing, at University of Buffalo. She created a really amazing project. It's called Life Support. It's a man-made architectural tree structure, and she actually has like sensors and monitors, and it's used quite a bit, and they've been able to gather a lot of research and data based on that structure. I will say another huge component, and the reason why these biofollies, these man-made structures will be efficient and effective, is like really just also being able to design sensors and different components to fit inside these structures to monitor biodiversity. So again, different kind of conditions as opposed to trees. Hopefully that answers that question. Thank you, Alex.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much, Tori. Sorry, there's one thing. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. There's lots of questions like, how can we get more information? I need a recording. We are recording. So for folks who want to rewatch any portion, we will be sending out the recording, as well as a link to all the resources that Tori shared in her presentation following the presentation. So you should look out for a follow-up email from us. Thanks again, Tori. I think we're going to transition now to the final segment. So for folks who are interested in learning more about Rain Gardens to the Rescue and the Stormwater Specialist Training Program, please stay on, and we will be happy to answer any of your questions. So with that, we got more questions in the chat. Sorry, let me see.
Oh, I saw some notes saying the link didn't work. I just threw the link to the website in the chat. I don't know. It looks like it was put in right. Okay. Yeah, I think if you click on this link, it should take you to the site. It should be okay. Great.
Perfect.
Just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Thanks, Tori.
Thank you. It was really great. Awesome. I appreciate it.
All right, folks. We are going to move to the final segment for Green Your Neighborhood, which is the Rain Gardens to the Rescue and the Stormwater Specialist Training. Sorry, too many tabs open. All right, and I will pass it to Jackie to start us off.
Awesome, thank you, Elaine. So I will first be starting off our conversation about our upcoming programs with our Rain Gardens to the Rescue program. This was created in partnership with Sierra Club and Friends of the Rouge. We first put in rain gardens back in 2011 when residents were looking for ways to manage their stormwater on their own property. So here you can see our big old map from 2011 when we first put in those Stahelin rain gardens, all on a street with several neighbors. And then here in the teal, you can see all of the years of Rain Gardens to the Rescue gardens that we've put in, as well as our partnership with Land Waterworks Coalition. They're in the green. And then we have more recently also been partnering with the National Wildlife Federation to install several different larger scale rain gardens at houses of worship. So if you are interested in any of those other programs, please reach out to us. We could definitely get you those resources available. So Rain Gardens to the Rescue in particular is aimed towards Detroit residents, as well as nonprofit and other institutions that are wanting to manage their stormwater on their property. And Elaine, you should be able to go to the next slide. Okay, this is also a wonderful example. This is John's garden. This was planted just last year in August. On the left, you can see that's right after we were done throwing down the mulch. And John is actually a wonderful artist too. So he has a beautiful drawing of his rain garden on that poster he's seeing. It's probably too small for you to see it in this photo. But then on the right was a larger storm event that happened later in the summer. So our gardens that we put in weren't there when it had that big storm in June and July. But this was a later event. As you can see, the rain garden is doing what it is supposed to do. It's holding on to that water coming off of his home, going down the gutter and directly into the garden. And then if you can kind of see the street behind him and how much it's flooded, that car driving by is kind of creating big old waves. So that is a great photo of showing what a rain garden is, what it does, and what it helps to protect. So rain gardens we install to help manage stormwater. As Elaine mentioned at the beginning of this presentation about Detroit's combined sewer system and just the major need to manage the stormwater on our properties. So if you want to go to the next slide, please, Elaine. And then here we have a couple quotes from a few 2021 participants as well. Alicia said that the course itself was very educational. It balanced support with allowing you to design and own the plans yourself. And Carla said it was great meeting fellow Detroiters engaged and invested in improving infrastructure of the city in small but significant ways, and that the course was a great experience from start to finish. So I think those quotes encapsulate a lot of the Rain Garden to the Rescue program. So through the course, we educate Detroiters and the general public. It is open for anyone to join those educational courses. So please, if you are interested in wanting to learn more about rain gardens, we highly suggest you join us. So let's see, let's go on to the next slide. I think that has all the important stuff on it, hopefully.
Oh, the dates here. I can flip backwards. So
okay.
Here you go.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I skipped over.
No, you're right. No worries.
So our Rain Garden to the Rescue program this year is going to be happening Wednesdays in June. So there is 5 courses. Each week we go step by step of what a rain garden is and how it functions, as well as designing your rain garden for your specific site, as well as garden design with all of our beautiful native flowers. So that will kick off on June 1st and be each Wednesday through June 29th, 6 to 8 p.m. We are hoping to have this class in person. We have that information on the website, or we'll get that updated very soon. And then we will also be planning our plantings in August. This program awards 10 residents with a rain garden of their very own. But even if you are not selected, we still highly encourage you to join the class. Like I said, we step you through everything that you need to know to feel empowered to build a rain garden for yourself as well. And we also have folks that join the Rain Gardens to the Rescue course to help install larger community gardens as well. So like we've kind of mentioned before, creating that community space is really important. And all of our Rain Garden to the Rescue gardens, we do ask that they are put in the front yard or in a highly visible spot for the public to see, because it's a great educational resource. And once you have it in, you're going to get so many questions of what's that rain garden, or what's that garden, what's it doing, and you'll have all the knowledge to educate them, and hopefully even be able to help out neighbors install some gardens of their own as well. So we have our application up on our website on that link there, therouge.org/rain dash, sorry, the chat's in the way, rain-gardens-2-to the -rescue. Sorry, that was a mouthful. But we will put that link in the chat for you as well. Applications are due by April 29th. And we had some delays for our other application, but we will also be having that application available in Spanish as soon as next week. If you're interested in getting that application in Spanish, please reach out to me. I have my email on the very last slide, so make sure you write it down. And Elaine, if there's anything else I missed, I know that was kind of quick. Oh yes,
No.
also mentioned, yeah, go on.
Yeah, there were a couple questions in the chat. One of them was, would you be allowed to bring your daughter? Yes. So we actually always encourage for this to be an intergenerational experience, especially the planting aspect. So she will be more than welcome to come and learn. And then the second question was, what area are we focused in this year? So this year we have a priority for projects in District 6, which is actually that Southwest Detroit area that Tori presented on earlier today. So if you are in District 6, that's where our priorities are for gardens this year. But if you live anywhere else in the city of Detroit and you're interested in a garden, please apply. We always have folks, for some reason, like they might not be able to complete the course because something comes up. So we have a wait list for all folks who want the garden support. So if you are a Detroit resident who wants gardens and hands-on support, installing, please apply to Rain Gardens to the Rescue. If you are from any other community and you are interested, you are welcome to attend the classes. You just won't get the plants or the hands-on support actually installing, but we can definitely point you in the right direction and equip you with all the skills you need to do it yourself. Let's see a couple more chat. Let me make sure.
Yeah, and I'll also add that I love having kids in there. They have the coolest design concepts, and they are always helping their parents pick out which flowers look the prettiest, or are gonna invite the cutest little critters too. So yeah, we definitely encourage friends, family, anyone that you'd like to have join you. It's always more fun with more folks.
Perfect. All right, and I will transition to a second program that we're hosting this summer called the Stormwater Specialist Training Program, which is a workforce development program. So as Jackie mentioned, together, Friends of the Rouge and Sierra Club have been hosting Rain Gardens to the Rescue since about 2011. And in that time, we worked with a number of residential homeowners, but as well as folks who are house of worship leaders. And we noticed that there's a challenge for larger scale green infrastructure projects as far as maintenance is concerned. And so with that in mind, we created the Stormwater Specialist Training, which aims to teach folks how to maintain large scale green infrastructure projects. So they'll learn everything from weeding, maintenance, how to monitor a site to make sure that your rain garden or bioswale is functioning as it's supposed to. And if it's not functioning as it's supposed to, we'll equip you with the skills to mitigate that. So this is a great opportunity for folks who might be in a transition, or maybe you have an interest in landscaping, or even have a landscaping company and you would like to add garden maintenance to your list of services, then we encourage you to apply to the Stormwater Specialist Training. The city of Detroit is installing green infrastructure across the city. They have a number of installation in parks, houses of worship, as well as businesses are installing green infrastructure because there is a drainage fee. So Detroit Water and Sewage Department has a drainage fee, and for non-residential customers, there's the opportunity to earn credits by installing green infrastructure. So essentially, if you install a very large rain garden, you get a certain amount off of your monthly bill if you are a non-residential customer. And so as a result, we're seeing lots of folks who understandably want to install green infrastructure, but they might not necessarily have the exact expertise to maintain that once installed. So if you are interested or you know someone who is interested, we are hosting that course from May 23rd to June 30th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at St. Suzanne's Cody Rouge Community Resource Center. We ask that all applications be submitted by May 18th, but we are admitting folks on a rolling basis. So if you think you might be interested, we encourage you to apply as soon as possible. And you can find that application on therouge.org/Detroit-SWST. Let's see. And I'm just checking the chat for questions. Yeah, Irma asked where are classes going to be held. So the plan is to hold the in-person classes at New Mount Hermon Baptist Church in Southwest Detroit.
And that specifically is for the Rain Gardens to Rescue class. And then the Detroit Stormwater Specialist training will be held at St. Suzanne's Cody Rouge Community Center.
Yes. And Angela, I see. Yes, so if you are in Highland Park, we encourage you to apply to Rain Gardens to Rescue. All the work that we do is pretty easy to replicate. So like, for example, with Rain Gardens to the Rescue, we install all of it with volunteers, and each person selected for a garden has to recruit their own volunteers. So it's easy, even if you don't end up necessarily getting a garden through our program, it's really easy to replicate, and we'll take you through the process of your site design so that when you leave the class, you will be ready to go. We'll just need to connect you with the resources to get the plants, and you could just recruit volunteers to help you actually dig everything out.
And then if you go through the course, we become like a really tight-knit group. So you're going to have people to hopefully help you dig out a garden or split up some plants and share that with you as well. So it's a really great experience.
And Alex asked if the courses are free. So yes, Rain Gardens to the Rescue and the Stormwater Specialist training, they're both free. So if you are interested or even slightly curious, we encourage you to apply. Here's some photos of our Swiss class to kind of give you an idea. The bottom right picture is actually the garden that we now use to demonstrate maintenance. So this is when they were digging the garden out. Now, should have included a picture, but now it's a nice, thriving, beautiful rain garden. And we use that rain garden to teach Swiss participants how to maintain green infrastructure projects. Perfect. And if we do not have any other questions, then we would, we got a question or a chat. We have a question in the chat. Sarah says, this has been needed for so long. I'm glad that you are doing this. Thank you. We are happy to do it, and definitely glad that we're able to connect. Alex wants to know, is there a link to learn more about sewage charge discounts related to green rain garden installation? Yes, let me try to find one. I'm gonna stop. Well, I'm gonna find one on my other computer. Hold on one second.
Oh, another great resource that we have on this slide for folks in Detroit or just anyone wanting to see more examples of green infrastructure. We have the link on the screen there for the Detroit Stormwater Hub, which is an excellent resource. We are actually in the process of adding all of the beautiful rain gardens that we've helped install onto that Stormwater Hub. I think you have tons of different examples of different GSI practices, such as like permeable pavers, even just depaving and downspout disconnects, as well as larger bioswales, smaller rain gardens, rain barrels and rain totes, and the list goes on from there. So I highly recommend you check that out as well. I will put that link in the chat too.
Jackie, can you pull up the link for the non-residential drainage credits? I'm like, I can't stop sharing and find the link, sorry. I'm gonna go back. Irma asked
Got it,
for the
Elaine.
dates.
Thank you,
Let's
Cindy,
see.
for sharing that.
Thank you, Cindy. So here's the dates again for Rain Gardens to the Rescue if you need those. Awesome. Well, that is all we have. If there are any final questions, we're happy to stay on for a little bit. But if not, thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. We really hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, our emails are at the bottom of this page. So if you can reach out to either Jackie or I or myself, like we're both happy to answer any questions that you all have about any programs. And as we mentioned, we will be following up with links to all the resources shared today.
Yeah, and I think that email will be coming to you tomorrow once this recording is up and ready to go. So keep an eye out for that.
Yes, and as Cindy mentioned, that together Sierra Club and Friends of the Rouge have installed over 100 rain gardens in the city of Detroit. So we are certainly happy to continue this work.
And I'll just thank Tori again for joining us and sharing her wonderful presentation. Again, I believe she shared her email. Maybe she wants to put it in the chat if you want to reach out to her. You have some great resources. I know we have a lot of experts who joined us on today. So I'm sure she would love to hear from you all as well.
Yes, thank you all. Really appreciated being on today and sharing the work. And I did put my email in the chat for those of you who are interested in reaching out. So thanks again, and everyone have a good weekend.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.